This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, Rabbi Say, good Ma'ir, good Yom Tov, and here we are in the hallowed walls of our Yitzchak, Chalamoid Pesach, and if I'm going to really confuse you now. It's going to confuse you, so please don't get confused. I'm going to thank Peretz for being here in our Yitzchak. Last week we thanked Peretz on Wednesday night, and I was scared people were going to make Shabbos early because they got all confused. Because they only thanked Peretz Thursday night, and now, and not only am I thanking Peretz on Wednesday night, but Peretz is in our Yitzchak. You understand? So it's Mamash Ashini in Olam, Shana, and Nefesh, and person, place, and thing. Moshe Seifer is in Texas, yes. And the reason he's in Texas is because he wants to be Mekayim Kol Dichvin, Yesef Yiftach, in the most appropriate way possible. And there's no better place in Texas. By the border, we have mamish, hundreds of thousands of people coming over every second. And as David Shlomo said, v'yiftach, and they're jumping over the border. So Pesach. So it's mamish. He's mamish doing the kedushas hachag. So that's a very. We thank everyone for thank David Shlomo for being here on a Chalamoid. Okay, very appreciative. Yosef Moshe Bechowski said his car is in the shop. He didn't know there was going to be a shir. That's what he said. He didn't tell me which shop, right? He didn't tell me. Maybe it could be sold it for Pesach, right? He didn't tell me it's in the grocery store, in the bakery. He just said it's in the shop. Didn't say which shop. Yosef Shkoyach Rafal came. I showed Rafal. You're looking very good. Yom Tov, very good Shkoyach. Thank you, everyone. Yankees here, my Einikel Yankee. That's a big schus. Chucky Shkoyach. Everyone else, Shkoyach for being here. But again, it is Wednesday night. It is not Thursday night. You know the famous story that was Rav. He was a Moerdika action, and he traveled with his entourage to Chasana, and they stopped to daven mincha, and he walked into the woods to daven mincha, and there were two wagons, and the first wagon thought that the Rav was in the back wagon, and the back wagon thought the Rav was in the first wagon. Both wagons left him in the woods, and he wandered off in the wrong direction. Nice, when they got to the Chasana, they realized he wasn't there. They went back to look for him. They only found him a couple of days later. Problem was that he miscounted the days. He was a day ahead of himself. And he thought Thursday night was Friday night. He was thanking Peretz Wednesday night also. But we're not confused. We have our heads on our, right? Are we? It is Wednesday night, right? Okay. Is it? Wait.
It is.
Wait, it's Wednesday, right? It's Wednesday, okay. Hayim Arba Yom Loim. Okay. So that's right. But he was all confused. This Rav really thought, and he was screaming, on Thursday afternoon, close the stores, get ready for Shabbos. And he was driving everyone crazy. And everyone said, it's Thursday. Don't tell me I know when Shabbos is. And it was very complicated. And and then came, Friday morning, he was screaming, it's Shabbos, Chil Shabbos. And then on Sunday, he was screaming, why are you not putting on tefillin? Didn't know what to do with him. And whatever they could do, they could not convince him that he's off by a day because he was lost in the woods. So the Rebbe Reb Shmelka came, and the Rebbe Reb Shmelka said, I'll take care of it. And the Rebbe Reb Shmelka brought in a very, very, he said, everyone say he's right. Everyone said he's right, you're right. And it was Thursday night, and they were all getting together to have Kiddush Friday night in Shul together, the cover that they figured out which day Shabbos is. You know the story, David Shlomo, right? Yeah, and then they brought in a very, very strong wine, and they brought in a Zabris Kashir, and he donated a new kais for him, a big kais, sent him, and he told him that this is the, they filled it up. It was there's 96 proof wine?
There was then.
Anyway, so and he poured in a few Dalit cases. Into the thing. And he reminded him of the shir you have to drink. There's some shir how you have to drink the whole kais, and you have to drink it Tach Kedei Revius. And the Rav made Kiddush, and he drank it, and they started getting ready for the Til Sidayim. And little by little, he dozed off a shtickle, and they quickly bought pillows, told everyone to tiptoe out of the room. And then 24 hours later, they all came back, and he woke up the Rav and said, I must have been sleeping for 5 minutes. He showed him you fell asleep at 5 to 7, and you woke up at 7. And he says, you should know. Does anyone believe me that tonight is Friday night? He said, yes, tonight is Friday night, and all was well. So sometimes I think in our life, we need need to straighten ourselves out a little bit. So get Yom Tov, everyone. Shkoyach. So somebody told me this good line today, that a cop stopped somebody. He said to him, you're weaving back and forth. Oh, Mordechai, Shkoyach, thank you so much for coming. Okay. So a cop stopped somebody. He said to him, you're weaving back and forth. He said to him, drugs or alcohol? And he said to the cop, thanks, I have enough of my own. It's okay. You don't have to offer anything. So, Baruch Shechianu V'Kimanu. I just was thinking last year, actually someone told me this good vart. I'm not going to say who it is. He's sitting by the table. Remember last year Smachman, Skayach, thank you. Remember last year the truck that went around for Birchas Elonis? Remember they put a tree on a truck and it went around for Birchas Elonis, right? So and just think where we're, over a year, a lot of people went through a lot and lost a lot. There's a lot of voids in lives. And I don't know, did we change? Did we really change from last year? I mean, right now, if you see a tree, you tell me you see somebody walking around with a tree for Birchas Elonis, I would say either you have a choice of drugs or alcohol, or maybe that person does. But last year, it was very common. This guy was driving around with it. How many people think that they changed from last Pesach to this Pesach? Rafal, do you think you'd... Yes, I'm sorry.
Definitely by age, yes.
Yes, we're definitely a year older. I understand that. But, Rafal, do you think that you changed from last Pesach to this Pesach?
I do. But not because of the epidemic.
Then why do you think you changed then?
Because
it's time you changed.
I said, I'm a year older.
You're a year older. My. Okay, Mordechai, do you feel you changed from last year to this year?
I hope so.
You hope so. Rav Sapaznik, do you think, what's your first name, sorry again? Michal, you think you changed from last year to this year?
I hope so.
You hope so. Peretz? Of course you changed. Last year was only Thursday nights, now 2 weeks in a row you're doing Wednesday night. Yosef? Now you're going back to where you were, you're saying. Okay, we got to put the trees back onto the trucks, you're saying. Vey. Okay. So here's the shaila. Okay, so really you're supposed to drink wine every single day on Chalamayit. Is there a chi of simcha on Yom Tov? Of course there is, right? It says v'samachta b'chagecha. But it says v'samachta b'chagecha by Sukkos. No, but the v'samachta b'chagecha goes on all the Yom Tov. The Pesach can make sorry? Tesvav, Chagamayit. Pesach can make that very, very clear. Even Chalamayit, there's a chiyuv of simcha. But the psukim don't beferish talk about simcha on Pesach. It's automatic, there has to be simcha because it's Yom Tov. But there's no mishenichnas adam marm b'simcha. You always have to be b'simcha, right? Make no mistake, toiv leiv mishta tamid. And like we said before, the v'samachta b'chagecha by Sukkos refers to all the Yom Tovim, including Pesach. But why doesn't the pasuk say so beferish by Pesach? Why doesn't the pasuk emphasize simcha by Pesach? So there's a chi of simcha every Yom Tov. If you take a look at Shulchan Aruch, Siman Tav Kuf Chaf Tes, there's a mitzvah on every Yom Tov to divide the day, Chetzi Lechem v'Chetzi L'Shem. It says the Mishnah Berurah brings you should scream at the chazan who's marich more than half the day. Because the second half of the day you have to be... That's what they scream, right. That's what they're screaming, yeah. That's a private joke. Anyway, Akopanim, there's half the day you're supposed to learn, half the day you're supposed to eat. Some people do that all year. At least the half a day eating, they do that. So I heard this once, some people are not going to like this one, that this guy comes up to 120 and they say, listen, Lashon Hara, Rechilas, not good, Gehenim. And he's already imagining the worst. And they take him into a Beis Medrash. And he sits down with Svarim. This is it. Push. Hey, good. And he sits down, he shakes back and forth, he looks around to see he's sitting there, and he gets up. Someone says, where are you going? He says, I'm going to get a coffee. No. Here we bring you the coffee. You stay in one place. He goes, he's this guy. And you can't get up to go make a coffee, I'm glued to one place. So a disclaimer. No, I've seen younger like that. They really get into it. Me too. I can really, really get into a sefer and mamish sit and learn for hours. If I have to prepare a shir. If I don't have to prepare a shir, after 5 minutes I'm fidgety. So I always wondered about that. Is it a lack of a munna? Well, why do you think it is that way? Yosef, give me some chizik over here. No, you don't think so. So how come I can't learn for more than 5-10 minutes in a row? But I have to prepare a shir, and I know I got to get this straight. I could sit for hours straight.
Because this is for everybody else.
You think it's koyach of the rabbin?
Yes.
So I was scared it's like a lack of a munna, because if the other people are going to hear what I'm saying, I have to learn to make sure that I know what I'm saying. But it's only... You think that's part of it?
Right.
You're giving me chizik. Yeah. So, Mordechai, you think it's like a lack of a munna on my part? No. Everyone's so nice to me over here. Wow. I need someone to give me musar. AD. Yosef says I simply have ADHD. Finally some chizik. Okay. I was in Kova hats once. They do the initials on the hat. And she goes, ADHD is here. And everyone turned around. Poor guy, his name was Avram David, Hollander or something, whatever.
Got distracted.
Yeah, but he wasn't there because he got distracted. Right, very good. Good point, David Schleimer, yes. So somebody said your point, your problem is, yes, somebody told me my problem, yes, is a lack of ability to focus. You jump from one thing to another. I said, that's total nonsense. I jump from one thing to another, which reminds me of a joke. No, I said, how do eyeglasses work? Eyeglasses.
Almost like iPhones.
Like iPhones? No. There's the lenses are tilted in a certain way that you have to. It forces your eye to look through a certain point. When you're nearsighted, there's nothing wrong with your eye. It's just that your eye, instead of being round, is egg-shaped, and as a result, instead of you seeing in a straight line, you see like this. But what happens is the tilt of the glasses, which is why if you need a bigger prescription, you used to need a thicker lens. Now they have some kind of voodoo, they make it thin anyway. But you need a thicker lens, right? Because you need a bigger angle. And basically what the eyeglass does is it's like shaped in a certain way. It forces your eye to look through the center of the lens. So I think there are situations in life that force us to look at a certain point. If you have to give a shear, I'm forced to concentrate. I don't know. But I think there are situations in life, if we learn to focus properly, then we'll realize that there's untapped bracha within us in who we are. It's got to break through. You got to break through those first minutes when it comes to learning. They say the Chazayin Ish was a very, very hot day in Bnei Brak. As you know, Bnei Brak could get hot. Yeah. Right? You can bake matzahs on the sidewalk, yeah? And the grandparents lived there, right. Wow. And you went to visit them in the summer, huh? Yeah. Okay. Yes. And it's scrambled. It was sort of frying pan of scrambled eggs. Step outside. Just make sure you get your egg, not someone else's. So the Bachrim and Panovich said to the Panovich Rabbi, it's impossible to listen. Let's go to Chazayin Ish and ask him. They saw the Chazayin Ish was Ryan Giton and Asugya. There were no air conditioning then. Not the standard air conditioners, not the ones with the, what are they called? The ones the new ones. Split units, yeah. They weren't split units. Your head just split from the heat. That's what happened. So they asked the Chazayin Ish, how do you learn in such weather? He said the problem is only the first couple of minutes. But once you get into the sukkah, you don't remember how hot it is. Okay, that's what the Chazayin Ish said. So we need to focus the first couple of minutes, right, to get into things, to move on. So getting back to whether there's Simcha on Yom Tov. There's Simcha on all Yom Tovim. It says in Mechaber Siman Tav Kuf Chavtes, Chayiv Adam Liyos Sameach, a person's mechuyev to be happy, the Toiv Leiv, the Moyed, Hu Ve'ishtoi, him and his wife, Ubanav and his sons, V'chala Nilva Me'elav. There's a particular stress on Yom Tov of providing to those people that don't have, even more so than on Shabbos. I'm not sure why. The Zayir brings the pasuk that on Yom Tov, if you don't provide for others, it's considered the worst. It's not Simcha. Your mitzvah of eating is useless. And even on Chalamayid, there's an inyan of Simcha. The Mishnah Berurah says there's Simcha on Chalamayid, but there's no Einig. What's the difference between Einig and Simcha? Anyone? I think we discussed this once. What's Einig and what's Simcha? Yosef? There's an oneg on Shabbos, right? We don't have an oneg Yom Tov. We do. There's the famous sefer oneg Yom Tov, right? Rafal, what would you say is the difference between Simcha and oneg? Simcha is all day, and oneg is just during specific time periods. Okay, I hear.
So oneg comes from.
Oneg comes from.
Well,
Oneg is internal, and Simcha is external.
Or just the opposite.
Oneg, you have to feel a physical pleasure. And Simcha is in your mood. Yes? We have to work on this a little bit. What's the chiluk between Einig and Simcha? But in Einig, there's a chiyuv to eat. Let's say on Chalamayid, there's no chiyuv to eat. There's an inyan to wash. There's no chiyuv to wash. If you get Yal v'Yavai Chalamayid, you don't have to, by benching, you don't have to rebench. On Yom Tov, you do. But in any event, there's still no independent pasuk. So obviously there's a chiyuv simcha on Chalamayid, and that's true for Chalamayid Sukkos, it's true for Chalamayid Pesach. But there's no simchas beis ha'she'evas on Chalamayid Pesach. So there's a chiyuv simcha, but clearly the Torah stressed the simcha on Sukkos, and from Sukkos we learn about Pesach. So some Sofer says that the reason the Torah doesn't stress simcha by Pesach is because on Sukkos there's an independent inyan of simcha. You go out and you dance. On Pesach, you have to feel the simcha through the chayris. In other words, on Pesach, it's the mitzvahs hayoim, it's the mitzvahs of the Seder that generate the simcha. That's what some Sefer says. Pekudei Hashem Yisharim Mesamchei Leiv. And mitzvahs generate simcha. So there's no independent mitzvah of going out to dance. It's just that the mitzvahs hachag generate the simcha. Okay, so let's say the mitzvahs of the Dalit Kaisis and the matzah and the karpas and the charoisis and the marar and the stealing the afikoimens and buying your eniklach afikoimen presents all generate simcha. What about the rest of Yom Tov? Now that Yom Tov is over, now that the Seder is over. So if I have to draw my simcha from mitzvahs maisius, I have no mitzvahs maisius left, other than getting together, Shishal Pesach, and sing a little bit, but that's right, a minig.
That's why it's called Seder, because it's for the whole year.
Oh, we're getting it. David Shlomo just knocked out the entire shear.
I'm sorry.
He's just one step ahead of me. Okay. So the answer is what David Shlomo just said. The simcha after the Seder is to believe that the Seder worked, to be mesader me. The simcha is that my Seder set me into place. You're going to say, my Seder set me into place? My Seder was a disaster. My brother-in-law walked out on me because my father-in-law insulted him. I tried to block a bottle of grape juice from falling and I mistake knocked it over on my father-in-law's new kittel. He laughed. My mother-in-law is upset at me. My mother is upset at me for not disciplining the kids. My wife is upset at me that my mother mixes in. My son-in-law refused to eat the soup because the hashgacha was the wrong hashgacha. My other son-in-law kept insisting that I wasn't doing haseiba enough. I kept leaning and leaning over until the arm of my chair broke off and I wound up with my feet in the air. Everyone else was laughing. One guest stormed out in protest when someone suggested that he let someone else get a word in edgewise. And he said, it's not true. I let everyone talk. It's not true. You're a bunch of liars. I let everyone talk. That's your thing. And that's your thing. How dare you say that I talk nonstop and I ramble on? It's not true. It's not true. It's not true. Who says I need to get the last word? Who says that? I want to know right now who says he was going on and on and we couldn't stop it. And those are the small things that went wrong. You know what I mean? You want to hear about my Chalamoy trips? You We went down to the water to watch the boat ride, I said. We decided it was much more fun watching all the people online. You know what I mean? There were like 10,000 people online. There was this pitsy boat, and because of Corona, they only let 2 people on the boat at a time. And one of them was the captain. I don't know. I think they're still there. So you know that in the Orlando, there are those of us that went to Orlando. My closest thing to Orlando, like we heard in the car, is David Shlomo made my clock in the car with a picture of a palm tree. That's right. Then when I get a phone call, the palm tree goes away, you know what I mean? That's the closest I got to Orlando. So, what do you mean? The Seder straightened me out. It was such a great Yom Tov, I got to keep the Simcha going. It was a disaster, my Seder. What do you mean I got to keep the Simcha going? So there's this narrow waterway called the Suez Canal. I don't jump from one thing to another, do I?
Maybe you didn't pick up your coffee.
Yeah, could be, yes. There's Suez Canal, right. There's a Chalamoy trip going there tomorrow. Suez Mitzrayim, right. So the Suez Canal is how you go from, one side of Africa to the other?
Well, it's a shortcut between the Mediterranean Sea and the Indian Ocean.
It's a shortcut between the Mediterranean Sea and the Indian Ocean. And if you didn't have the Suez Canal, you'd have to go all the way around the coast of Africa. And Africa is it's more than a Tchum Shabbos, right? The coast of Africa. And so a boat was stuck there for 2 weeks or something, a little less, because this big cargo ship. Everyone knows Paris. When I say 2 weeks, it means a week, so it's okay. Anyway, there was this big cargo ship. It turned sideways, and it got caught. How big was this cargo ship? 3 miles long? No, huh? About 1,000 feet long? Oh. How's that story go? There was this... I forgot it. There was this boy, he used to exaggerate all the time. And every time he would come to a show, they would come to meet a girl. He would say, where are you learning? So I'm learning in Lakewood for how long? 120 years. Joe Biden's in the Senate for 120 years. He can learn in Lakewood 120 years, right? Is your family really also tall? Some of them are 30, 40 feet high. And so they said, you'll never get married. It's funny, the Shadchan sat there and he just, he sat next to him, made sure he corrected him. And he met this prospective father-in-law. He said, you have, were you in A sukkah? Yeah, my father built a sukkah on the street, yeah. How big is it? He said it's half a block long. Really? Yeah. And he says, and your family, how many guests do you have? 100. 100. He kicked him before he said 1,000. And I said, how do you get everyone in? We have workers. We have like four. Ouch, ow. You know? Fischel Schachter went to the bathroom for a minute, and finally he said, that's kind of a big sukkah. Who's it for? He said, all the people that cross the border, all 30,000 people a day, they all come to the sukkahs. Moshe Seifer sends them to my sukkah. We have like 95,000 people a day. He says, how could that be? He says, no, really, there's just only 10. So why did you say 400,000? It's because the Schachter went to the bathroom. That's why. So it was a big boat, okay? It was a very big boat. And it turned to the side, and it got jammed, because it's supposed to go straight. Instead, it drove sideways, and it got jammed. And there were like 400 boats, taka 400, that could not pass. And you have half the world's cargo goes through the Suez Canal? Quarter? 20%. Shines, I'm not off by that much, okay. And Lamaisa, so it took them who knows how long, how many days did it take them to straighten it out? They could not unjam it. Right. And how did they unjam it at the end? They said Hashem, what? Tugboats? And bulldozers, and they had to dig out. Did they try calling Chaverim? No. Anyway, at the end, yeah, they're still going ahead of that. So finally they were there, so all these 400 boats were waiting, 20% of the world's cargo. Even Lashitas Paris is only 20%. It was, yes, you'll notice I exaggerate less Thursday nights than Wednesday nights, because usually Paris is there fact-checking. But anyway, Akupon. So when Moshe Seifer and Moshe Bechowski is listening in, hi Moshe, everything okay? Usually here it's the opposite. I say 400 feet, they say no, it was 800 feet, Thursday night it goes the other way. I say 800 feet, there's a 400 feet. Yeah, we come to a pshara somewhere along the line. Know the story? That this Rebbe, these two people were talking about the Rebbe, and one of them said that he went out to be Mechadish Levana, and there was no Levana, and the Rebbe waved his scarf, and there were 1,000 Levanas there. It's crazy, Meshuggah, crazy Chassidish stories. Then he said a story about his Rebbe, that thousands of people showed up for Shalosh Shudas, and that the Rebbe wanted to give out Bilkelach, and he had 12 Bilkelach, and he gave it out to thousands of people, and the Bilkelach never goes, you're out of your mind. He goes, you're out of your mind. They both start arguing. Finally, they made up Shara. He said, I'll come down with 500 moons, and you come down with 600. I'll say 500 moons less, and you say 600 Bilkelach less. And they said they were okay. They came to a Shara. But seriously speaking, this boat was stuck, and you had all these boats that could not get through. And it took days and days till they finally figured out how to straighten it out. Now all the boats faffed, and they said they can get through. I said because they're not used to driving a bar park. If they were used to driving a bar park, you can get through anything. There's always cars parked on both sides and, going through. But you know what the Seder is, says the morale? This is really what the Seder is. The Eibush has a plan for us. The Eibush has a plan for us in our entire life. There's an itinerary for our life. The Eibush has a perfect plan for us. And every once in a while, the Yetzer Hara gets a hold of us and we get stuck. And you know what the Seder is? The Eibush just straightens out the boat so we can pass through, and everything else in our life that's connected to us can pass through also. And the Maral says, like David Shlomo said before, seriously speaking, that once the Seder snaps us into place, we begin to put our lives together. Because until then, the boats were stuck. And the whole Indian of the Seder, Kadesh, it's Mekadeshas, it's Urchatz and Karpas, a taste of the future, and Magid, our ability to teach. Like Ramosha says, we say every day, L'shmai Lumed L'lamed, because there are those that you meet every single day, that you have an ashpah on them. And, we have an ashpah on each other, right? If you weren't here tonight, it wouldn't be a shir. In all due respect to the people on the camera. There's a physical thing that blows from one to another. And the Eibush, the time of the Devar says, the Eibush is only mashpia to you if you are mashpia to someone else. That's the way it works. You have to have someone to teach to, in order for Kadosh Baruch Hu to give you the ashpah of Torah. So Magid is, but if you don't take the opportunity of reaching out to the people that are around you, you miss the boat. And that's what Magid is. Magid is to reconnect the Hashpah and Hashemayim. And Yachatz is teaching us that there are times in life that you can't have what you want, and you have to break off the bigger piece and put it away for later. And Rachza, the Indian of going to wash and coming back and missing your Rafi Kaiman, and Moitzi Matzah and Berach and Hallel have one Indian that Moitzi Matzah. Like, what does Moitzi Matzah mean? Take out the matzah? What does Moitzi Matzah mean? Anyone? What do we call it matzah? What's Moitzi Matzah? Rafal, what's Moitzi Matzah? You know? Take the matzah out of the oven? What's the Moitzi Matzah? Anyone?
Well, you make a moitzi and then
it's a hamaitzi. It's not moitzi. So the hamaitzi is really one of the inyanim of the seder, right? So is beirach. So is benching. But why is that one of the inyanim of the seder? That's we do anyway. You make hamaitzi. I don't want to say on what because it's Pesach, but you make hamaitzi matzah Shabbos when certain people go to certain stores and they buy certain things. I'm not going to say, and they eat 2 pieces of it. Macaroon cans, whatever. What's the moitzi? What's the beirach? And
bread?
Okay, and the answer. Okay, so the answer is that every benching in your life lifts you to a different madrega. There's a certain amount of times in your life you're going to bench. The Eibush has a cheshbon. There's a certain amount of times in your life you're going to make a moitzi. It lifts you. That's ha-moitzi. It draws you out, right? You're supposed to stress the hay in the ha-moitzi. Says the Gemara in Brachas. So, but we get stuck. The brachas aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing because we got stuck. Because we said certain things we shouldn't have said. We looked at things we shouldn't have looked at. And what the Seder does, it corrects us. It corrects us so that now the hamoitzis can come through. And now the regular beirach can come through. As you get older, you realize that, each Pesach in your life represented something else. And we have to believe that on Pesach there's a reset. We're getting back to all those things that went wrong by the Seder. Who says that's not a reset? When a 2-year-old starts wandering away, wandering closer to the street, and the mother's watching, in the last minute, yank! And the 2-year-old's terribly upset, Just when he was getting to the interesting part, boom, the mother pulls him back. And here we have this big, beautiful Seder, and everything goes haywire. Yeah, the Eibush is putting you in your place. Because you think it was a terrible Seder, that doesn't mean it was a bad Seder. It was your Seder. It was Mesader you. When was it, Rabbi said, that nobody ate matzahs or drank Daled Kaisis? There was 1 year, no one ate matzahs or drank Daled Kaisis. When was that? Purim, right? So why? Because Mordechai and Esther made a gzeira. No one should eat matzah or drink. Why did they do that? Why did Mordechai and Esther make that gzeira? Why? Yeah, yes.
Because part of the plan was Hashem should see that
Hashem should see. Look, there's no matzah. Look, there's no seder. But really, it was a year later, right? It was a year later the gzeira. So what was the big rush? Make the tainus the day after Yisru Chag when it's mutter behesped of tainus. So the Chassam Sofer says a pella the Sasema says a murder vart. He says Haman's power is to make you believe you're confused. Haman's power is to make you believe you lost it. You lost it. The Eibush doesn't want your Torah. The Eibush doesn't want your learning. I have sveikus and munna. I struggle through a Yom Tov. Yom Tov is a very hard time for me. A lot of people say Yom Tov is a hard time for them. And if there's a family, there's a challenge in a family, Yom Tov becomes a very hard time, especially Pesach, which is most family-oriented Yom Tov. And there are times in our life we live in such a stira. We live in such a, my shalom bayis, my life, my parnasa, is such a stira with who I want to be. I'm so twisted. And it must be this, you begin to doubt Hashgacha Chas v'Shalom, or the Rebbeinu Shalom dumped me or doesn't care for me. And that's where Haman works. Haman works on a taruvos of toivera. Like we've often said, the Chidush Yerim says that the Dalit Bonim, the Chacham, the Rasha, the Tam, Sheni, the Elishal is the same person. We all go through it. And this was Haman's Kayach. What does Svir Sa'omer do? Svir Sa'omer is Mevar the Toy from the Ra. And that's why you can't eat the Nutfua until you makar the carbon Eimer. What does the carbon Eimer do? It takes out the Toy from the Ra. That's the Tnufa. The Tnufa that's done is Malo Moirid Moilachumevi. It's the Talim Royim, the Ruches Rois. The Kohen takes you and says there's going to be bad winds in your life. It looks like you're being blown in the wrong direction. The tal that's supposed to give you tchiyah, that's supposed to give you a chiyah, to wake up in the morning with the simcha. Said you wake up in the morning, you throw the cover over your head, and you're so worried about things that are going on in your life. And some are imaginary worries, and some are real worries. And the Kohen said, "Don't worry, it's part of the process." But I'm davening, and Hashem is not answering me. I'm so confused. It's part of the process. And you understood that that's also part of the Amunah. That's also part of the Seder. That's what the Kohen did for you. And once he was mevared that, the Kohen set you in place. Once the Kohen set you in place, then there's 7 weeks of working on ourselves. Through Chesed, Gvura, Tveres, Netzach, through all the Midos, and the combination of all the Midos. And to understand there's a Gvura Sheba Chesed. There are contradictions, Gvura and Chesed. No, there's a week of predominant Chesed. And then there's Gvura in the Chesed. There's Shalom Bayis. And then there's this argument. This is what life is about. This is the perfection. And once the Yidden understood that it's a beer of Toiv and Ra, Haman has no power. Haman only has a power when you believe HaKadosh Baruch Hu dropped you. And that's why Haman's yard side has to be Daf Goen on the first day of Sfira, says the Sfas Emes. And that's why she needed the tinus on Pesach. That's Haman's day, says the Sfas Emes. So I read a story that these people, they were exiled to Siberia during the war. And the Russian soldiers that were coming back were selling little things. And, in Siberia you couldn't get anything, to say the least. You couldn't order on Amazon in Siberia. And they didn't have those trains that came, big trains, Amazon Prime. You couldn't, there's nothing. And some of the soldiers were selling soap. And this person went out to buy the soap. And on the soap there was a big J. There was a J on the soap. And they realized what that meant. This was made out of the bodies of Yidden. And this girl writes, when she brought it home, she began to scream, Hara of Haras, that she was holding the soap. She like, it was a nightmare of a nightmare. And her father said, give me that soldier. Where is he? Where is he? No, don't do anything to him. I'm not doing anything. She ran, give me all the soap. Give me all the soap. And he bought all the soap he could from any soldier that passed by, and he went to a Beis HaChaim and buried it. So let me bury it, B'Kevi Yisrael. Who knows what the cheshbon is, Menashemayim. And I'm thinking here, she's like, slapped in the face with this soap, this Hara of Haras, and her father has say, okay, so I have a mitzvah now to be makaver it. You see, on the Hara of Haras, there's you can do it. There's this book that came out now from Rabbi Grossman's beautiful book, The Living Legend. I think it's a great book. But there's a story there from the Rivnitzer Rebbe. I don't know why it's there, but he repeats, somebody told it to him, and he says that a man came and said that there was a man who didn't have children for many years, and the Rebbe promised him children. And year after year it wasn't happening, and they were already married 30 years, and the Rebbe kept promising him a child. At one point he said, I'm not leaving the room till the Rebbe promises me, and the Rebbe promised him, and they were expecting a simcha, and the doctor said that the Rahman al-Islam, the baby is lifeless. And he told the Rebbe said, no. And that she kept the baby full term, and when the baby was born, they said it's a lifeless baby, and they covered it with a sheet. And he went running to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, the Rebbe's in the mikveh now. And he ran back to the hospital, and obviously him and his wife, and all of a sudden this lady, a pediatrician, walked in and said, what's that? So the baby just died without it. They're just preparing the paperwork. And this pediatrician lifts the sheet and pours water over the baby. That's what he writes. And the baby starts to cry. So he felt like the Rebbe was in the mikveh and he sent the water somehow. So I don't know what the story means. But it says that the Banay Sasuke brings the water that falls during the days of the Sfira is a bracha, when it rains during the days of bracha. It's like the Rebbeinu Shem says, you're alive, you're not dead. Let the water wake you up. We've reorganized you. We will re-misader you. So, just to end with this story. Is it a true story? It's true that it's in a storybook. But here's how the story goes. There's this king who wants to take over a certain territory, and he's fighting, and the back and forth, and the soldiers are getting killed. So finally the general will say, listen, it's a war of attrition, soldiers are dying, we're not going to war anymore. The king said, I order you to go to war. He said, we're not listening. Is this a rebellion against me? He goes, you can call it that, yeah. He says, guards, arrest the generals. They say, no, we're part of the rebellion, sorry. So he says, so who's going to get the property? Who's going to get that thing that sent all these soldiers to die for? They said they're going to look into the yichus of both kings, and the king that has a better yichus, he gets that territory. And then they come back to this king, and they tell him, listen, we looked into your yichus, you come from Persia. Achashverosh. They said, no, you're an anakel of Haman. Haman, yeah. But he doesn't have royal blood in him. He's a barber. And the other king, he's the anakel of Achashverosh. He gets the property. So he was so angry. He said, tell me about this Haman. So they tell him what happened to Haman. So he says, okay, then I want the Jews in my town to write. I'm going to be an easy target. And he had to let off his anger on something. And here the soldiers weren't rebelling. They were willing to listen to him. He said, I want the Jews in my town to bring me 10,000 kicker kesef. I want it to be given over to me by somebody named Mordechai who has 10 sons, and I'm going to hang them all. That was the Gzeira. And for the Yidden it was Choshech. It was Sak ve'efa Yutzel Rabim. So they went to the Ramah. That's what it says. And the Ramah said, I can't help you, but there's a Yid who lives in your town. He's a tailor. He's one of the hidden tzaddikim. Go to him. So they go to this tailor. He goes, I heard about the terrible Gzeira. No, you have to help us. We know you can help us. The Ramah said, you're one of the hidden tzaddikim. He said, if I'm hidden, it's hidden from me. No, I'm telling you. We're not letting you go. So finally he says, okay. And Meister Shoy Kachaya, the king, is sleeping at night. And he wakes up and he turns from one side to the other. And he looks up, and standing next to him there's an old man. The king jumps up and pulls his sword out from his pajamas. I guess the king slept with pajamas and his sword, between the choo-choo train and the teddy bear that he had over there. And he said, how did you get in here? Shh, don't scream. And he storms out. He tells the guards, how dare you let someone in? Nobody came in. What are you talking about? He grabs the guards. He's there. Who's there? No one's there. He realizes the guards don't see him. And to make a long story short, the king starts screaming his head off, so much so that he falls out of the window. And he lands in the bushes. He gets up and he's in a cemetery. Doesn't know how he got to the cemetery. He has no way out. The king. He's freezing to death. He can't climb the walls. At the end of a week, he's half dead from freezing from hunger. The old man shows up. He says to him, help! He says, I can get you a job as a wood chopper. Anything to let me freeze to death. He gets him a job as a wood chopper, and he chops wood for a year. And after a year, the old man comes back to him. He says, no, are you okay now? He says, better than starving to death, but I'm a king. You can't do this to me. Where's the covered malchus? So I'll get you a job as a bookkeeper. So he gets a job as a bookkeeper. He's there for 3 years. He says, it's better than the wood, but he said, I'll get you a job as being a mayor in a town. Mayor? He has a job to be a mayor, and he's the mayor, and he has to take care of the garbage, and he has to take care of this, and he has to do news conferences over, over the subway and the buses, and he's like, I used to be a king. And after 2-3 years, he says, but get me out of here. And the old man says, old man only comes back after a few years, and he says to him, I'll get you a job as a king. Not in your country, different place, takes over as a king over there. He has experience. He once was a king someplace. To make a long story short, because in Pirchei this takes a couple of weeks, and he marries, and he has children, and they go for a royal walk along the river, and all of a sudden this huge big storm comes, and they're all blown into the water. He doesn't know what happens. He's struggling for life, and he realizes you can't fight with the waves, and he flows with the waves, and he winds up on the sand. And on the sand, he's half dead. He lays there for 2-3 days. He gets up, he starts walking, and he sees lights, and he comes. He says, it's his palace. This is his original palace that he was there many, many years ago. And he comes walking up, and he said, the guards aren't going to let me in. They're not going to recognize me. And he pulls up, and he's ripped clothes, and the guards don't see him. He just walks right by them. Wax museum. Hello? Nothing. And he comes right to his room. Hello? Psst. Hello? They look like the kids in my class during Shir. Hello? Nothing. And he walks right in, and he, you know what I mean? And the guy's there, and he says, how'd you do this to me? You throw me out for 10 years? Are you out of your mind? He says, what 10 years? Look at the watch. It was 10 minutes. He says to him, and I can send you for another 10 years. And he goes, no! He says, well, sign a decree that you're mevatel the bad gzeira against the Jews. And he signs the decree, and he gets into bed, and he wakes up a few minutes later, and he goes, it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare, the whole thing. And they all come in, they say, today's the day, the Jews got to bring the money. You look a little shaken, your hair standing on the net, some experience, it's okay, it's great. And finally they say to Your Majesty, what's this paper? What paper? And he looks at it, and there's the signature that if I ever dare, if I don't rescind the decree on the Jews, the whole thing starts all over again. And he said, no decree against the Jews. How dare anyone say anything against the Jews? We were the one. Don't blame it on me. Over. He wasn't willing to go through this again. What do you think is going to happen after 120 years? How long is our life? So that does say in the Swarah, it's going to be 2 minutes. We were sent down to this world, and but there was 70 years, 120 years. It's going to feel like 2 seconds, yeah. But it was a very complete mission. And we're in this mission. It is very confusing. What's happening? I'm going from one thing to another. But unlike the king, we know if we close our eyes and say there's a hashgacha, there's a boirei olam. I know you sent me here. I know I'm coming from you, and I know I'm heading back. And every once in a while there's a seder, and you're clicking me back into place, whether I understand it or not. And here's the Yemei Asvir. After someone has a dislocated shoulder, he's less be careful for a while, right? So after the seder, Hashem put us back into place. We have to be careful for the next 7 weeks. Then Be'ezra Hashem Yisbarach, we can come back to the bracha of the throne, of the cherus in our lives, without having to go through again the pain and the tzara that goes along with it. Good moyed, and thank you everyone for coming.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.